So one of the first ideas I had when I originally imagined the idea for the book The Paris Secret was that it would be about a woman stumbling upon this collection of haute couture Christian Dior gowns, and that somehow those would be a part of the mystery to do with the book. But I also wanted to write about a group of female pilots as well, and I also wanted to write about Christian Dior, and they seemed like some very disparate things. I needed something that would connect them and bring those ideas together. And in 2017, I went to the NGV in Victoria to see the Dior exhibition there. And it was there in that exhibition that the thing that I needed to link those things together finally happened, and I realised I was going to be able to write this book. So I think probably if I asked people to imagine what was the first city outside Paris to show Christian Dior's gowns, most people might guess some place like London or New York, but actually it was Sydney, Australia. That was the very first place outside Paris in 1947 to show Christian Dior's gowns to the public. And I discovered that at that exhibition I just mentioned when I saw this, which is the Paris Fashions for All program. And this is the front cover of that program. And this was the program for a series of parades held in 1947, featuring a number of French designers, including Christian Dior. So the minute I saw this, I thought, wow, I had no idea that Sydney was the place where people first saw Dior's gowns, apart from in Paris. And immediately after I saw this program cover, I went looking for more information. And so I actually found at the Powerhouse Museum, in fact, the entire program, the front and back covers, which gave me a list of all the different names of the designers that were featured in this parade. Everyone from Balenciaga to Pierre Balmain to Christian Dior, which was the most important one for me. So I dug a little bit more, as I like to do, and I found lots of newspaper articles about this series of parades at David Jones, including this one from the Sydney Morning Herald in 1947. And this is a really interesting title here in the article. It says, Paris Fashions to be shown on July 18 in salon setting. And this was because David Jones had decided that this series of parades in 1947 was going to be a spectacle. They wanted the customers to feel like they were sitting in a Parisian salon. So the models weren't going to walk down a catwalk. They were going to parade through a salon with people sitting around in chairs, just as they would in Christian Dior's salon on the Avenue Montaigne in Paris. The whole idea of these Paris Fashions for All parades was quite remarkable because back then there were no fast track fashions. Often, particularly for people in Australia, they were a couple of years behind the fashions of the rest of the world. But in this series of parades, for the very first time, Australians were going to be not just on the same level as the rest of the world, but even ahead of lots of other parts of the world. So David Jones transformed the entire fourth floor of the store into a salon. And they had posters of the models on the walls, and they tried to make it as much like a French salon as they possibly could. And in the lead up to these parades, there was lots and lots of hype. This is another article from a 1947 newspaper, and it talks about activity in the film world this week. And one of the biggest things happening in the film world that week was that they were making a documentary about the Christian Dior gowns that were being shown. This is one of the models here who featured in the parade. And it talks about the fact that there was going to be filming of the boxes of designs arriving in the store and being opened. And this is a picture from the documentary of the boxes arriving at David Jones with the label Christian Dior, fabulous models. Model being the word for the actual clothes and the designs back then. So there was lots and lots of excitement and fuss and glamour in the lead up to the shows, which were going to be shown twice a day for 2 weeks, and all of them were sold out well beforehand. And then there was the big gala opening, and it created a spectacle in Sydney because obviously this was Dior's new look, which was something radically different to anything Australian consumers particularly had seen in their entire lives. So the shock of the new look, these gowns parading through this salon, these 4 particular Dior pieces in this show. There was many pieces from all those different designers I mentioned before, and only 4 of those were Dior gowns. And Australian consumers loved those 4 Dior pieces. They became the favourites of the show. And from then on, Dior had an incredible relationship with Australia. The following year, David Jones hosted an entire parade just of Dior's gowns. But it was those first 4 in this parade in 1947 at David Jones' Sydney store that started it all off. And so I decided that I wanted to write about those first 4 Dior gowns that were shown at this particular parade. And so Kat, a character who I mentioned in another video, actually receives a donation from someone in contemporary times of those 4 pieces that were first shown in 1947 to the museum where she works. And that's what kicks off the mystery at the heart of the book. So I hope you enjoyed that little sneak peek behind the scenes at the Paris Secret and where the idea began. As I mentioned in some of my other videos, this is part of a series that I'm doing where I'm basically breaking up the talk that I would have given if I had been able to do my events, which have obviously been cancelled, just to give you a bit of an idea of some of the background behind the book and to show you some of the pictures and research that went into the writing of the book. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll be back again next week with another video.